we are here and we are back at the Daxcast. And today I got a very special guest, a good friend of mine, Noah Vale. How you doing, Noah?
I'm doing okay. How you doing, Dax?
I'm all right, man. Had a long weekend. Tampa Pro. We just put on our second event of the year over at
Fantastic.
Retro Rat. It was a long day, but the show went
Yeah,
very smoothly. Um,
fantastic. Always good to hear.
but Heavy successfully defended his heavyweight championship. Trying to
Fantastic.
think other events that occurred. Um, but that was the main event. We had Nasty Boy Brian Knobs that came out. Real great guy. Signed a lot of autographs for everybody that was there. And a hell of a show. I wrestled in a 6-man. It was myself, Nick Abrams, and Cowboy Kid, Andrew Mitchell versus Exodus and Logan Wrights of the movement.
Ooh,
So we had some
fantastic.
unsettled
Sounds like a
business,
good match.
and we locked horns one last time. And it looks like Logan Wrights and Andrew Mitchell will be have a follow-on match after that. So we look forward to seeing what comes to that. And we are back in. We're aiming for May 27th, I think. Like if Windows wants to cooperate with me, so I see my calendar. Yay, Windows 11. It is May 27th. We're doing a night show on that day. It's gonna be too hot to do Thursday. It was a little toasty.
Yeah.
This one wasn't too bad, but one thing we have a problem with is everybody, all the fans that come, they want to sit in the shade, and Hardcam is facing outside where there is no shade. So everybody sits on the other
Yeah.
side. So we started the show off. We had one person sit on Hardcam. It's like, oh jeez, but it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, and but it was great. I mean, I say a lot. That's one of my bad habits, so I say so and the reason I say so a
You're
lot is because it is a crutch, because I used to stutter when I was younger, and so
mhm.
was a breakout word. The breakout word I would use to be able not to stutter. So that's why I say it that way.
My little
So let's talk
brother actually
about.
used to have a
Does he have the same
similar
issue?
problem. Actually, when he
Yeah,
was younger, he used to have that same kind of stutter.
yeah. So Noah, tell me about what's going on with you. At least in your neck of the woods. We'll dive in, obviously, to a hot topic here with the Forgotten
Oh,
State topic, and kind of
absolutely.
sets a. I think we need to set some things straight, because I think
hmm
there's a lot of interpretations, and I think just intro yourself a little bit and tell us what you're doing right now.
Oh God, I am the Sex Pistol Noah Vale. I've been wrestling in the Florida area for about 5 years at this point. I've been as far south as one can go in the continental United States in this state, and as far north as one can get before you end up in Georgia. I've pretty much run the gambit. As far as things I've got going on right now, just a lot of traveling, a lot of going to a lot of different places, and a lot of really cool branding and marketing things that I'm really excited to get set
Great.
up in the future and get set up for myself. Um,
Let's
so
talk.
just a lot of
Like
work.
let's talk. Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit later. But let's dive into you. At least when you started out, I believe you were trained by Tony
hmm
with DWI, if I remember
Yes, sir.
correctly. Because I think I may have met you on my tail end when you were just a young boy, doing young boy stuff at that point,
Yeah.
and maybe my last show or one of those at the old Home Depot flea market deal or whatever it was,
Yep.
over in Ruskin. And
Yeah.
I probably crossed paths with you then. You just were a nerdy guy with glasses and didn't completely different look, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
And but you were out there paying your dues, and so you kind of get kicked off there and all that kind of stuff. And you kind of graduated there, then started
hmm
working the scene. You're in Sarasota, Bradenton. Where are you at?
Uh, Bradenton area, kind of on the border
Bradenton.
between Bradenton and Sarasota. but
Yeah,
Bradenton.
yeah. I love Bradenton. It's beautiful, but the at least the beach area is. And
Oh
so you started working that scene. Uh,
yeah.
like you said, you worked, all the way down to like Miami and different promotions. What promotions, like would you like to mention? I guess as kind of ones you feel like because you wrestled for me over at Tampa Bay Pro with Azrael
Yeah,
as the Sex
definitely.
Angels. Hmm.
Definitely Tampa Bay Pro. I definitely say that Spirit Pro Wrestling, when that was still around, was definitely a
Spirit.
huge help
That's
as
what was
well.
named. It was
Um,
escaping me what the name of that promotion was. That Alex Todd
it
was kind of helping out with and that stuff.
it was a really good opportunity because I ended up meeting a lot of different people out there that much later on kind of ended up becoming kind of like mainstays in like my general kind of group around me. Like I
Hmm.
think back to that time kind of fondly because it was one of the first times outside of the bubble that me and Azrael ended up tagging together. It was one of the first times that I'd ever met Robert Martyr. It was one of the first times that I'd ever really got to spend some time with first class, Ron Bass Jr. and Daniel Starling, and kind of really get to set the foundation of like the core people that would be around me. It was the first time I ever got to lock up with Wheezy T as well. So it was really like a foundational building block for myself as a performer. Can't fail to mention Real Pro Wrestling as well. One that kind of escapes a lot of people's minds in terms of, I think, the annals of history is House of Lucha, which was ran by Poppy
Poppy. Hmm.
Nieves. Yeah.
Yeah, Poppy
Um,
Nieves
yep.
and what's our other buddy?
Super, super solid
Preston
guy.
Kane.
Yes, sir.
Preston Kane.
Preston was
Yeah.
actually like one of those guys who kind of took me when I was during that like young boy phase, the first couple of years of my career, and really gave me a lot of solid advice. Him and Donnie both kind of pointed me in the right direction as far as things were concerned, and gave me a lot of really good experience early on. Um,
Two great guys, by the way. Just
uh,
great
fan-
dudes. You know.
fantastic dudes, fantastic dudes. But yeah, me and Azzy, especially in those early years, just kind of ran the road and where they would take us and gave them 100% everywhere that we would go. And, that's allowed me to have a lot of great opportunities kind of branching out and meeting a lot of new people and getting to a lot of different places and, ending up at some of the places that I end up now, thankfully, because of those opportunities and those, connections and the things that I've learned on my journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you kind of went through the gamut there in
Absolutely.
Florida for quite a few years. I mean, not like 20 years or something like that, but you spent some time, working the promotions in Florida, and likely, like anything, you
Yeah,
network, and I think that's important for people to understand. At least in the wrestling business, is networking is very important. It can be more important than a lot of other things, but
absolutely.
because right place, right time, right people, opportunities present themselves, and especially when you're going, like, even in Florida, if you're going from Bradenton to Miami for a booking or what have you're riding in a car with somebody for 4 hours, then 4 hours back. So you get to know people. They're like family, and that's why I look at wrestling as a somewhat fraternal um, occupation in a sense. And it's great to see you kind of bond because it's funny. I remember Azrael was just a young pup at the time, and his real name, his first name is Joe, and Joe is like, "Hey Dax, I got this guy. He wants to, he's my tag partner now." I'm like, "Tag partner? You've had like one match, Joe. What are you talking about, tag partner?" And like, like me, you never know who someone's gonna cross, like get to know on the scene.
Oh
And then
yeah.
he's like,
Oh yeah.
"Oh, it's this guy Noah," and I still didn't know you by that name yet, but I knew your real name, Trey, and I was like, "Oh, Trey." He said your name, and I was, "Oh, I know who you're talking about," and I wasn't worried about like some Billy Bob coming in and be like trying to
Yeah.
mooch off of them because you and him complement each other very well, and you're a respectful dude, and I know who trained you and all those kind of things. So, and then we started, when I would do the mock shows, I would let do open ring and all that kind of stuff in at the training facility. We would, you guys would come out and work out and try things out, and kind of build up a tag set and a singles move set as well. And you guys really matured, and got on the road, and then started doing stuff out of state, and kind of the rest is history. Well, I guess we're just starting out here for you, really. And
Trying.
so
I'm definitely
so tell
trying.
me about so tell me about some of the promotions you're working with out of state, out of Florida, that is.
Outside of Florida, last year was a huge kind of year, sort of spreading out for me, as well as a lot of the guys that I kind of ride with. Um, SEI action next up, a huge opportunity down in Georgia for any of the younger guys who are looking for that opportunity to kind of get their feet wet in any out of state sort of venture is a fantastic platform. Gets you on IWTV, gets you in front of a lot of people who are influential and have, I guess you could say, a sort of higher level of intelligence than some of us who are just starting out, um, and it's really valuable because there's only so many people that like a you or a Bud Heavy or anybody has time to give advice to in one day. If there's a show and there's like 20 of us or however many of us that are coming up to you, whether we're booked on the show or not, there's only so much advice you can get from one
Yeah,
person when they're being swamped by that many people. So
yeah,
it's always nice to
yeah,
kind of branch out and get that perspective from so many different people.
yeah,
Um,
and I think that's important, especially when you're starting out. You need that feedback, so you can
absolutely,
make corrections.
absolutely,
RBJ would tell you, I'm a big guy like Joe is, and I give him criticism, and he knows that.
Mm,
And a lot of times, I'm not saying, I'll tell me, hey, you did this well, you did this well. I don't like how you did that, and usually the I don't like comes first. But I'm not going to go out of my way just to be like, hey, man, you got to clean this up.
yep,
Usually it's you know hey man, I saw like for a while there, the only reason that I had an IWTV account was to watch Joe's matches, RBJ's matches. Um, because I knew he was going up there. Then Dan started going up there with him. And then, next like Tyshawn and Wheezy and all them
yep,
were starting to go up. So I kind of keep an eye on that for a bit. And all those things are good things, man. Because no matter what,
absolutely,
like in my perspective, I want to see guys be successful. I have nothing other to gain in this business as somebody at my age. Still being able to do it is enough. Like, and to be able to kind of help. And I'm not like one of those godfathers of independent wrestling. People come to me, they want my opinion, I'll give them my opinion, but I'm not going to kind of go out of my way that opinion out there, because I've also learned if you try to do that, that makes you kind of like um too aggressive about that. And some people don't
absolutely,
like that. Sometimes
yep,
you just let most shows, I don't give anybody my opinion unless they ask for it. And
and
eh,
and that also, to the point, not to cut you off, but it also it shows who is willing to kind of take that advice and who really
yep,
wants to learn at that same token, because they're you know even in my I guess you could say limited experience, there are people who I've had come up to me and ask me advice, and I'm not really anybody special or anything like that, but uh, it's very different when it's like you have somebody that's coming up and they want to learn and they want to know and they want to improve themselves, and you can see the want and the drive and the ambition behind that. It makes it a little bit. It makes you feel a little bit better because it's like you can think like this person's actually going to take what I'm saying and take the advice and the criticism. They're going to
yeah,
work on whatever it is they need versus somebody who's just kind of, it's like, oh, well, this person's just giving me advice. I'm just gonna blow smoke up their ass and be like, oh yeah, cool, yeah, I'll take that, and then
Yeah.
they move on about their day. And um, so I think that that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I've always kind of strived for when I go to shows, is like, whether I'm going up to Indiana with Naptown or Paradigm or anything like that. If I'm in a locker room with somebody, um, and I respect them and I respect what they do, and they're, a veteran who's been around for a while, and there's somebody who I want to learn from, I'll go up to them, I'll ask them questions, ask them if they saw my match, ask them to watch my match, because you never know what valuable piece of advice you can get from somebody. Even if you think that, maybe because they're a bigger guy, they don't wrestle the same style as me, there might be something that they see that you might not necessarily be aware of, that they might think of from a different perspective, and that could always be useful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you take it, and there's like you take that criticism and you use it. My
Absolutely.
trainer always said, take everyone's criticism, listen to them. You don't have to take their advice. You can just listen, hear them out, and let them speak. And if you have any questions, come to me and ask me, and I'll give you my feedback of their feedback, and we can go from there.
Mm,
And I think a lot of people see, like, you get some old geezer vets that are really just trying to, stroke their ego, and
yeah.
it kind of just, and but most people can tell when that's the case. Like, if you've been doing this for at least a little bit, you start to understand that. And but let's go ahead and so just to mention some of those promotions, Matt Griffin over at Action Pro in is it Georgia, Tennessee? It's in that
Georgia.
kind of, it's
It's
Georgia.
the
It's northern
it's
Georgia.
it's Georgia. Matt Griffin has a very close relationship with Scott Hensley, who runs like the SCI stuff that he does.
Yeah,
Usually about
it's Scenic
Scenic
City
City Invitational.
Invitational.
Yes, sir.
Is that a promotion,
Um,
or is it a actual just a like events that he runs once in a while type of thing?
it's like a once. It's so they have their SCI Rumble, which is kind of like a once a year sort of showcase. Then they have the Scenic City Invitational. The Scenic City Invitational being a tournament.
Yeah,
Can't
that's
remember
what I
what the
thought.
winner gets for the prize of
It's
it,
sort of
but
like a host
uh,
style tournament, I believe. Because Martyr won
it
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 last year,
it
like
can
the
be,
singles.
absolutely. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
got a very sort of old school sort of feel to it. It's very wrestling. You know what I mean? But they do have a lot of new school kind of guys up there, like Wheezy, like the Gifted just went up there and just wrestled with Top Team. Um, some of the guys from the WWA 4 Academy down in Georgia ran by AR
yeah.
Fox, which
Oh,
was a
Fox's kids,
fantastic
yeah.
match.
Yeah,
Fantastic
that was, I
match.
mean, yeah, Aaron's a great dude, and he trains his guys well,
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
he's super athletic. He makes, and that rubs off on his kids there.
Oh yeah,
And
those kids are
there's
nuts.
and then
Every time.
you have because those kids are hungry, and like Georgia has a wide variety of styles in that state, kind of like Florida. I mean, Florida's the same way. If you
Yeah,
go to, the mid central to south, it's a little more fast paced wrestling. If you go stick to up north, it's a little more old school. The southern, like what we would say, southern style, the NWA style.
yeah,
And But then I know Action is more of a, like more of a faster style. And
yeah.
then I don't know about SCI as much because I just don't know it. But I know it's very reputable. And you also have Jaden's promotion. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. In
TWE, I believe.
TWE, his promotion that's up there, and they buddy up with a lot with IWTV, and they have other promotions come through there. I think like ICW New York will go through there, and different places like that. And you got but yeah, you got like and then you have Paradigm in Indiana. I want to say, is
Yes,
it
sir.
Indiana where Paradigm is? Yeah, and
Yeah,
so but all those are on that IWTV deal, like they're like in that circuit, so to speak. Like Alex Kane, for example, who works over at MLW with me. he actually he came out of that kind of circuit, and Kelvin Tankman was another one that
Oh
came
yeah,
out of that circuit. Hmm. Both those
fantastic,
guys were working
fantastic.
Paradigm, um, and
Now,
but
Tankman actually runs the one of the promotions that I'm a regular at in Indiana, Naptown All Pro.
okay,
He's
yeah,
one of the four founders, so getting to have the opportunity to share a locker room with him and pick his brain a lot is really really cool.
yeah,
Alex
Tank's a
Kane,
great
somebody that
kid.
I met, him and Myron Reed, both two guys that I
Yeah,
met when I was at Paradigm, was a very, again, another fantastic learning experience. Both of them are really solid dudes. Watching Myron put together like a multi-man match was a sight to
yeah,
behold, genuinely.
yeah. I've known Myron since I started at MLW. He was there before me actually, and he's so freaking talented and can
Oh
move
yeah,
like guys like Spider-Man out there, and he's
oh yeah.
smart with his wrestling. He makes the moments count. He gets the most mileage out of what he does. Great dude. In and out of the ring. His beautiful wife and two kids. And hey, everybody, if you want to support the Daxcast or Tampa Bay Pro Wrestling, we have multiple tiers available on Patreon. Go ahead and head to our official website, tampabayprowrestling.com, click the Patreon icon, and go ahead and check out what memberships and tiers you would be interested. We always appreciate all the support, and our proceeds go to the production of Tampa Bay Pro Wrestling and the Daxcast. Thank you so much. But
Fantastic.
moving on. So I mean, you've been bouncing around here, kind of, experimenting. You're still doing some Florida shows. You do Real Pro. If I call you, you probably come over if you're available. I know I've hit you up a few times, but you're just booked out or whatever. And which is all great things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I want guys to go and get a name for themselves and out this area code, because you have to do that. And I think you are doing that, which is great. And then that allows you to be a little more picky with your Florida promotions because you got some stuff outside that you don't have to be as picky because you already got kind of a regular deal going on. So let's talk about the the topic of the week, I guess, or topic of the month, I would say.
Absolutely.
And let's talk about the forgotten and just like I just want to hear your side of it, not the innuendo or any of that other stuff that came along with it that other people may have interpreted. I know Eddie Torres, like Eddie had his opinion on what he had heard, and he vocalized, and there were some things I agreed with based off of his understanding of it, but I also had other understanding of it. So I think let's hear from your side, and because I think you were at one of the forefronts of kind of where this came about.
So the Forgotten State originated, just as a little bit of a backstory to set the stage. Um, Going back to action, AC Mack had won the IWTV World Heavyweight Championship. I can't remember exactly who he wrestled for the championship, but upon him winning the championship, there was a sense of like accomplishment, and there was a large sort of promo that he had cut, kind of a rallying cry for the South in a sense. During this promo, he effectively, in gimmick, kayfabe, whatever you want to call it, uh, effectively was holding the championship hostage. Uh, the championship had spent most of its lifetime in the Northeastern promotions, and this was sort of his way of saying, we're going to keep this down here. We're going to defend it in the South. We're going to defend it in the Carolinas. We're going to defend it in the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Missouris, et cetera, et cetera. He missed a few states in there, and one of which that I and some of the people that I was riding with at the time when we were on our way to action for the first time uh, was Florida. Of course, being the prideful individuals that we are, we took offense to this. The entirety of this had spurned on a movement that was effectively coined as Southeast First. effective kind of coming out party for Southern wrestling, at least in this sort of spotlight, right? And my thought process at the time, and to an extent still is, I found offense with the fact that during that, Florida was not one of the first initial thoughts on their mind, especially considering the close proximity to Georgia at the time, and that it seemed a lacking of representation in this sort of bubble. I also thought, because this is how my brain works, that's a very good marketing opportunity for us, especially as young wrestlers who are coming out, who maybe don't have a lot of buzz and backing behind us, as something that we can use to identify ourselves and kind of as an almost sort of domino effect, right? Um, you can't run a company if you don't have salespeople going out and selling your product and telling people about your product and spreading the word about your product. The product in this case just being Florida wrestling as a whole. Wrestling, as you're aware of, Dax, is something of like a feeder system, right? You go out, you get as big as possible, and can bring more eyes to anything that you do with your personal brand. The idea of Forgotten State, partially for myself, beyond simply just the pride and the I guess you could say love for my state and my wrestling scene and wanting it to see that recognition, is also, if we go out, we build our own personal brands, we build ourselves as being built from this forgotten state. That drums up interest. With that interest, we bring that interest back to Florida. And with that interest back in Florida, we bring a bunch of new eyes who are maybe here for our individual brands, or maybe just to see what this whole forgotten state thing is about. And with that interest, the entirety of the scene can overall improve, whether that be from other people's brands increasing, promotional brands increasing, or just the scene overall getting that extra boost of kind of flourishing. So it kind of bit of a double-edged sword, because it just kind of fit two purposes. The part that did surprise me was the, I guess, lack of understanding of that kind of system from a lot of people, and this almost sort of feral response to what is effectively a bunch of people just kind of touting the successes and touting their accomplishments of not just themselves but for the entirety of the state, almost sort of I guess in a sense trying to get others to rally behind all of us, because in my mind a victory for one of us is a victory for all of us, but I cannot assume that everyone else has that same mentality as well. But that's kind of the beauty of the Forgotten State, in a sense. It being a hashtag, it's something you can choose to use and it's something you can choose to ignore. But
Okay,
the
cool.
fact that it kind of drummed up this much controversy in the first place, at least for me, and this could be a misunderstood consequence, kind of proves that it works.
Well, it definitely got the attention of a lot of people, and I guess I'm not representing Eddie, or I represent myself. Okay,
Of course.
um, there. I think the thing that bothered some people, the dilemma with it, isn't the fact that you guys, one, are trying to get over, one, trying to. It's sort of a movement that you guys are trying to do with certain talent that are coming from Florida and going up there. I don't think that's a problem at all. I think where people had a problem is because you used the word state in there. Like, hey, we're the forgotten state. Like, what the fuck? Like Florida is supposed to be forgotten. No, it's not forgotten. And I think some of the points that Eddie was making, which a lot of people probably agree with, is the fact that Florida's like the mecca of pro wrestling. And the thing is, where it might be forgotten was IWTV. And because that was where a lot of TV companies were recruiting talent out of, because you have
Absolutely.
because you look at that time, at least, and still even now, you have Fight TV, you got IWTV, you got, what is it, Pro Wrestling TV? I think that's
Yeah,
another one,
I think so.
and then there's like some other but the whole online presence that is out there. There wasn't much representation in Florida, but that's not the talent's fault. That, if
Not
you
at
want to
all.
blame somebody, it's the promoter's fault. That promoters either aren't big enough to be on one of those platforms, or they might not record. Like, there's a lot of shows. I'm sure you've worked a lot of shows in Florida that don't record their
Abs-
matches, don't record their shows.
Absolutely.
It's literally just
Absolutely.
to run a show locally, and maybe for the promoter make a little bit of money, or maybe just to get the boys some reps, or whatever it is. But the thing is, but up there, they were hooked up. They had IWTV. There was no IWTV in Florida, to my knowledge, unless they like it was like a ICW at WrestleMania or whatever came through, or Paradigm at WrestleMania. But like when it was in Tampa, but there wasn't any representation other than wasn't No Peace, or maybe No Peace
I,
Underground or something was on there at some point. I don't think they are. I'm not sure where they are now, but like they had some sort of online presence. But you got most of the people that would just put their stuff in post and throw it on YouTube or throw it on Facebook or whatever, if that is even, or they won't put anything out. A lot of people are that, or they had their own deal with something else. Like with my show, Tampa Bay Pro, I put on Fight TV,
absolutely.
but I'm running in the rear because like 9 months in the rear with our tapings, just because we're backlogged. And
Yeah.
as the promoter, I take full responsibility for that. And part of the reason is staffing. I didn't have any help. It was me, and that was it. That was producing that stuff. And now I got some help now. I got some help, that some folks that are starting to help me out and kind of ease some of that. So, because I saw it becoming a problem. And it's been a problem for years. And for me to take Tampa Bay Pro Wrestling to the next level, we got to fix certain things. Ain't nothing
Absolutely.
perfect. But I feel, but I take pride in the fact that I put a product out there online. Other than
Yeah.
just selling tickets and putting butts in every 18 inches. And the thing is I, what sparked it for just to kind of go back on this. I remember talking to Dante, DMC, okay, and me and DMC go back way back. When he was just reffing and training and all that kind of stuff. And we've always, me and DMC have always had a good, and he's part of your deal, like the Forgotten State deal, and he's been very vocal about this. And I remember it was probably one of the Daytona shows at Go Wrestle, and we were talking, and it'd probably been right about when the Forgotten State got mentioned. And I remember telling, I believe we had this conversation at DMC, but I remember it, so it must have happened. And I remember it was right after PWI 500 came out, and
Mm.
it wasn't this year; must have been the year before, or whatever. And I remember saying to him, "Man, hey, this Forgotten State thing, it really makes sense with this PWI 500, because I look at this PWI 500, and most of the guys that are getting featured on here that aren't already TV talent are on IWTV. A
Exactly.
lot of them weren't even on Fight. It was
Exactly.
like it was completely skewed. And I was like, why is this? And to me, it's like, well, the guys that read this obviously have an IWTV account. And
Yep.
when you look at things, I'm just going to be frank here, and I know the guys that I know some of the guys at IWTV because with some of their production folks at MLW, and um, that also do services there from time to time. And I know for a fact that IWTV has like 7,000 subscribers, but those 7,000 subscribers have to be pretty dedicated to independent wrestling to want to do that. Fight TV
Yeah.
has 7 million subscribers, but they're also having all sorts of other events on there that have nothing to do with independent professional wrestling. It's
Mhm.
all over the place, but WrestleMania was on there. You know what I mean? I think some AEW at some point was on there, and way back in the day. that and like Bleacher Report or whatever it was. And the thing is, representation matters for Florida. And in a sense, I was like, I'm gonna say something because hey, sometimes I do see some of those guys from PWI, and I did say something to I can't remember who it was, but I ran across somebody up north, and I said, hey man, like watch some Florida wrestling. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
try to look at some of that because honestly, I see some of these guys in the 500, and I'm not trying to like shit on anybody, but there were some guys on there. I know that there's plenty of Florida guys that could fill those slots. You know what I mean? Like without a
and
shadow of doubt. And like in pro wrestling, shit's subjective. I get it. You know what I mean? And some guys are wrestlers like us as trained eyes can go and
yeah,
we can see like, dude, this guy is like really good. But the fans might not gravitate, to like Brad Armstrong or something. Like, dude, the guy's
yeah.
like a wrestler's wrestler. But the thing is like because they weren't getting eyeballs on them, they get scooted to the back and
And
off the
that's
500 list.
and that's what for us in I guess us in the Forgotten State, or just the Forgotten State in general as a concept, that's kind of what we want to address, is just bringing attention to, like, hey, there's a lot of skewed perception about Florida, because even when, for instance, I go out of state, or I can't tell you how many times, like, for instance, first time that I went up to Tennessee, one of the promoters of a very large promotion up there asked me, and he was like, hey, what's down there? And this is a question I've been asked multiple times. And they'll bring up the big promotions. Obviously, they'll bring up like FIP, WWN. Um, they'll bring up like Tampa Bay Pro and the Lethal Academy, if they're like really plugged into the know. But like
Mm-hmm.
they don't, because there's not as much representation. There's not as much, like you said, to your credit. There's not as much of product on the channels that they watch, or on the programming that they watch. They just don't know that we exist, and because of that, it leads to a lot of the talent that is down here, a lot of really good professional wrestlers being, for lack of a better term, forgotten. And with that, it's mostly for us just being very vocal about that, and kind of seeing it as a bit of an injustice, and being like, hey, we're here too. There's a lot of really great wrestling and a lot of really great talent down here, a lot of fantastic promotions, and a lot of fantastic professional wrestlers that are down here that should have this recognition, that deserve that kind of recognition, that should be on your PWI 500 lists, that should be featured on your showcases or what have you, that are
Covers of
just as good as
magazines, articles, spotlights,
exactly,
all that kind of shit on
exactly,
PWI or Wrestle Inc. or Raja.com or
exactly,
whatever.
and not having those things. Uh, I think it's mostly for us, of just kind of being like, well, if we can, I we, if anybody goes out, whether it's me, Marquise, Martyr, or anyone, and they want to use that hashtag, they want to bring attention to it, it's more so kind of like, in my mind, a bit of a battle cry, right? We go out, we show what we're about. Forgotten State, whether or not it's something that you want to do, is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, the purpose of it is to bring attention to us, so that our state, while yes, it is the mecca for those larger stages, your WWEs, your AEWs, and so on and so forth, that's great. That does not help your average professional wrestler who is 4 years in, who's 3 years in, so on and so forth,
Yeah.
unless they're like a fucking. I apologize if I can't curse on your program.
You can curse. That's fine.
Um, that that doesn't help a fucking young boy who's fresh out of school, who doesn't know anything, doesn't have a way, and has no clear path of what to do. But if he can see, okay, here are these Forgotten State guys, they're hashtagging a bunch of stuff, they're going out of state all the time. I'm going to try and hop in a car with them, learn what I can learn, go where I can go, and do what I can do. And maybe, just maybe I can get something popping. And
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't work for them that way.
It,
But I
it, it
can
might
guarantee,
work, it might not work. Yeah.
exactly, but I can guarantee you, if a WWA4 kid graduates and a WWA4 kid goes to any of these promotions and says, hey, I'm an A4 kid, it's an immediate The door might not be fully open, but it's cracked. And if we can do that for the entirety of the state of Florida, that makes it better for multiple generations down the line. And also, that makes it better for Florida as a whole, because now we've got bigger draws. We've got bigger people who can reach larger audiences, that can draw bigger crowds, make more money, and we don't have to worry about, uh, promotional issues, or having to scratch and fight and claw, or have some of these older veterans who have been doing this for 10, 12 years who are like, well, shit, who am I going to wrestle now, because nobody else is on my level? Not technically, but nobody else has that same prestige. Well, now we've made people.
Yeah. And the thing is I and I kind of sided with the fact of that there was merit behind it, right? It wasn't a fuck you to the state or anything like that. And I think some guys, it was subject to interpretation. I think part of the reason that is because you guys use the term state. I think
Yeah,
because that was said, that that makes you representing the entire state. Okay, but that's how you guys were associated with. You could
absolutely.
have been like the Forgotten City, Tampa, or whatever. Like you could have said any
Yeah,
kind of location, but that puts you on the spot for that. And then like I think Eddie said, it's like, well, then we're hearing from other people, what's up with your state? Like all this kind of stuff. Are you guys a bunch of whiners, or are you guys, is there something wrong in your state? Believe me, I have talking to people long before this Forgotten State thing was, and
mhm,
this says, yeah, man, I went out, like guys and gals that went down to Florida because they just came down and tried to contract chase and try to get signed or get a look or whatever, and it didn't work
contract
out
chase is
for
a
them, and
really
then
good
they
word.
and and then they come back and they're like, like they go back home. And then they're like,
Yep,
they have a misconception that Florida's fucked up or something, and it's not.
yep,
It's just like
exactly.
you didn't get signed. And so,
Yep.
like, don't go and dry your dirty laundry and air it out in Florida. The reason you didn't get signed
I
is because you didn't get signed, you know?
And I've heard so many of those stories from so many of those guys who have come down here and been like, "Oh, it's garbage, it's trash, what have you," and they aren't really entrenched in the scene because, and contract chase is a very good term for it. I'm going to steal that.
Mhm.
But you're right.
It's
They
all
try
right. They
to,
came from QT Marshall. They came from QT Marshall. He called.
but they'll,
I'm not gonna say we called it, but he said to somebody. Then they got back, and I got it from that. So
but
QT.
yeah,
Thank you.
they'll come down here and they'll try to chase the contract, or try to chase the WWE, or whatever. And when it doesn't work out, then they end up having to do the independent wrestling thing down here, and it doesn't work out in the same way, and they're bitter about that fact. And because they're bitter about the fact that they didn't get the contract, now they're going to take that bitterness when they inevitably have to, take their ball and go home. That bitterness leaves with them, and suddenly Florida is the problem, and Florida is this and that. If we don't have people that are out there, at least in my view, if we don't have people that are out there counteracting that narrative, we've lost.
Yeah.
Because there have been
I,
too many people that I know personally who have left, and these people are friends of mine, who came down here, things didn't work out, they left, and suddenly it's, my career was dying. My career didn't take off the way it was supposed to. My career was garbage. And it's not, like that though. Like, it's like, it's not like that. There's
it's
so much
not.
good here that,
That's not
you
what you
know,
guys intended. And the thing is I fully understand what you're saying. And professional wrestlers, one, there's a spirit of competition, and
absolutely.
we are always at each other's throats when we shouldn't be. It should be brotherhood or
Exactly.
sisterhood. And we should be trying to help elevate each other, because if I help elevate Noah goes somewhere else, and then he can help elevate me. Okay, so you scratch your
Exactly.
back, scratch mine. But like, I've never been on anything like, oh, hey man, I'll do this for you, you do this for me. I don't like that, doing that. I think that's kind of like carny. But like,
Yeah.
it is what it is, like a mutually beneficial relationship. But the thing
100%.
is really, you want to, like me. I don't have to run shows. I could go and work indies every single weekend, not have to worry about buying all this production stuff, buying rings, buying trailers, paying talent, doing all that,
Been there,
stuff.
been there. It's not
And
great.
yeah, and it's a
Yeah,
fucking hard job. It's a hard job, but I love I love professional wrestling. I love the creative outlet that it provides me, both as a wrestler and a booker. And I enjoy that, and I'm also older, so I realize that I can't wrestle forever, so I have to focus on some backstage things that I think I'm pretty decent at. I think I built a
yeah,
pretty good name for Tampa Bay Pro Wrestling. I think we're one of the top ones, and I know that because I talk to guys out of state. When I'm
yeah.
up at MLW New York or whatever, and I say, "Oh yeah, you know, um, like Tampa Bay Pro is my promotion." I try not to tell people that because then everybody wants to get booked by me. And the thing is, I don't got the rates to be going and flying guys in, $400 tickets
Oh yeah,
for 20 guys.
oh yeah,
It's just basic economics here.
yeah.
And but going back to what I was saying here, it was not just I get on a tangent about promoting whatever, but the thing is there's a lot of people here that don't want to be represented by others in the same field. So you're constantly going to be dealing with things like that. And I'm just giving you the kind of the antithesis of the
Yeah.
situation of what guys, you
My
know, uh, if someone tells me just real quick, if someone tells me Dax is forgotten because he's a Tampa guy, if someone says that to me, I tell them to fuck off,
yeah,
because I don't see you on fucking cable television wrestling. So, yeah, and honestly, I didn't get in this business for anybody else but myself. Like when it comes down to it, now I might be in the business for other people, but when I got in this shit for me, just like
yeah,
everybody else that trained. And like to be able to help inspire and things like that, and those things grow as you get older or in more experience, you see those kind of things. And I think you know, you guys running around saying, "Hey, we got the flagpole, the Florida flagpole, the Forgotten State, yada yada." I think a lot of people are like, "Well, why should they represent me?" I think that is,
I
like the where a lot of people come from, and my state ain't forgotten because I'm here, so they felt insulted by that, whether that was your intention or not. But that's how other wrestlers that I have spoken to have have interpreted. A lot of guys have kind of felt that way, but I as a big boy feel like I understand, and I kind of understood what you already told me, but I didn't know all the details. So,
yeah,
um,
I
yeah,
feel, and I with this entire situation being as it is, it's been one of those things that I've kind of poured over to try and understand the other side as well, just because I like to try and understand things from both perspective. There's a reason why people feel the way that they feel and why they react the way that they react, and that's just as valid as my feelings and shouldn't be discounted. My rebuttal to you know uh, my rebuttal to the flagpole analogy is there is room on this flagpole for all of our hands. There's absolutely no
hmm
reason why all
yeah,
of us can't carry this. And for not wanting to be represented by another person, go do it better than me and be louder than me. That's
yeah.
and
It's
for
kind of
me, that's the basis of professional wrestling, right? That's the basis of competition and what you want, right? As athletes, as professionals, as entertainers, if what I want personally for me, for Trey, Forgotten State, and everything aside, I want the young kids that are coming up after me. I want them to eclipse me. I want them to be bigger and better because that will make me have to work harder. And then it's just us continuously trying to outdo each other so that we can just continuously get better, right? If we don't push each other, we're not going to improve. If there's somebody who doesn't, it's less that we're ourselves just representing the state, but it's almost as though we have been forced into that situation simply because Others have just decided like, okay, whatever. If you guys want to take the flagpole, go ahead and run with it. We're going to sit back here and we're just going to kind of, point and give smarm. And I'm like, no, 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 chase, like push, like follow after. If you do not like, and this is a personal thing, I don't speak for anybody else besides myself when I say this next sentence. If you do not like what I am saying, you do not like what I am doing, outdo me, outspeak me.
Yep.
Just be louder. Because if you are louder than me, no one's going to hear what I'm saying, and you have the floor at that point.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want the air sucked out of the room, you just gotta be bigger than me. You just gotta breathe deeper. And I think that's I think that's something that for a lot of people kind of this one might get me in trouble. I think it's easier for people to have an opinion on something and to just kind of give those snide comments and those remarks instead of just putting their head down and doing the work. Because if we have other people who are doing similar things, it's just you're not championing them as much as we are. And if that's the case, why aren't you doing that? If you're traveling, there was a post that was put up during the whole debacle, and it was to the effect of a lot of us are out there traveling, a lot of us are out there doing these things, but you don't see us going on and on making it a whole thing. My rebuttal to that is, why aren't you doing that? Because that's kind of the point. That's branding, that's marketing, that's what most of the job of an independent professional wrestler is, right? If a tree falls in the woods, nobody hears it. Nobody knows whether or not the tree fell. If I fall in the woods, I'm screaming. People know that I fell, right?
Absolutely. Like we're like a strip mall, right? And we all got our own
Absolutely.
space at there. And the guys with the best product might not get as much sales as the guy with the biggest sign that has the
Absolutely.
billboards everywhere and all that kind
Absolutely.
of stuff. And from a marketing standpoint, I absolutely get it. And I always kind of got it, like from what you were getting. The thing is I guess it was never clear, and because
Yeah.
the words you use, state and forgotten, and not just you, but the clan, or not the clan, I should use that word, but the group, the faction, or whatever however you guys want to be referred to as, the movement of
I like
folks,
movement.
um, kind of just wanted to, be united in some sort of alliance of that. Hey, let's put this state on the map again. Because we used to,
Absolutely.
like Florida, and I think it still is. Absolutely, it is, but it is a different. Okay, like when you look at the state of Florida, there is there's a lot of things promoters have to deal with that other states don't have to deal with it. One is those contract chasers that are coming down
Yep.
here that
Yep.
99% of them fail at what they came down here to do when they end up, having to go back home and return to what they did. And in dealing with failure is a very hard thing to deal with.
Very.
Getting inside of this business is nearly impossible. Like I remember when people would call and they would inquire about training and things like that, and I would tell them, I said, listen, you have a better chance for playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or an NFL team than you do being a professional wrestler that's signed that's going to go WrestleMania. Because from a
Oh
number
yeah.
standpoint, that's just how it comes down to. And it's very difficult, but people get through. But there's no fixed method. And what you guys are doing is what you guys are doing. If it,
Absolutely.
and you guys also are not going around saying we're the Forgotten State Florida or we're the Florida Jets or whatever you want to say. Like you're going out. It kind of left out there, subject to interpretation, that kind of makes people think. And it has made people think. And the guys, a lot of the boys in the locker room, have different interpretations of that we already went over. We don't need to circle back,
Yeah.
but and I think leaving the state or just not leaving Florida necessarily, but leaving the state that you are a wrestler. If you're in Idaho and you got and there's 2 promotions in the state, you have to leave the state to get noticed by other promotions, unless you got a really good promotion out there, Um, if you're in Iowa or something like, unless you're on Sammy Callahan's promotion, that goes through there from time to time. Um, that's pretty much all you got. Like there's not a ton but there is independence out there, and it's a
Yeah.
networking opportunity for everybody. You got to leave your state. It's not just Florida.
Yep.
It's not just Georgia. It's
Yep.
not just Iowa or California or what have you. I'm sure when the PWI 500 comes out, a lot of people in California, where there's a lot of wrestlers out there, feel that they're not represented. And I would agree with that, because they don't have the coverage. Like when
Yep.
you go a big promotion that's out there, that Sheik has, PCW, one of the biggest promotions in the country, for at least it was for a while. I mean, they were on Amazon. But the thing is who knows if the guys that are doing the grades on PWI are not watching that, they're just not watching it because they're watching something else, or
Exactly.
they didn't realize it because they use Amazon Prime for other stuff. There's so much wrestling out there, and this is a problem in entertainment in general. Like you have a million streaming services, you still have a million cable channels. It's hard for people to find the product, and like you said, you gotta put your name somewhere. Send some people to the right spot. And if
Yep.
you're not a promoter, like a promoter for a promotion, you got to promote yourself somehow. And
Exactly.
because all, and then in the state of Florida, we also deal with the fact that, one, we got contract chasers that are coming through. So then they go and they end up working the independents, and the independents are paid as much or less than what they were getting paid in Idaho. And I'll just use Iowa just for the sake of example, in Iowa, or maybe they get paid even less. Guess what? Supply and demand, basic economics here. There is more wrestlers in Florida than there is in a lot of other states. Guess why? Well, a lot of wrestlers retired in the state of Florida, like old legend
Mhm.
wrestlers.
And a lot
You
of them
got
open schools.
a lot of them. You got the Dudleys, you got Lethal, you got Gangrel, you got. I mean, I can just go on and on and on. Okay, and the thing is because of that, you got a lot of wrestlers that are here. Okay,
Yep.
so supply and demand. The shows doesn't mean the shows get that much bigger because you got more wrestlers in this area. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's like a big thing. Next up, you got NXT with their coconut loop. They're back on the road.
Mhm.
All the independents are competing with NXT, at least for, hey, that allowance, that wrestling allowance that fans have. Because hey, I can go over to Largo and see NXT, or I could go over to Largo and this other later in the month and go see Tampa Bay Pro. Which one am I going to do? It's hard to compete with that. It really is. And I'm not making excuses as a promoter, but the reality is that is the reality, and
100%.
I know those kind of things. And
And
that's why
that's
I would go and
difficult
flyer
for
those NXT shows.
yeah.
I'll send
And
guys over to
and
flyer
that's
that. So, you
and
know,
that's difficult for younger wrestlers getting started as well, because then you're almost lost in the shuffle if you aren't doing something. If you're just starting out and you're not promoting yourself properly, or you're not finding yourself in the right market, it's very difficult for you to make a name for yourself, to get noticed, because every, what would you say, maybe year or two, there's a new class of wrestlers that are coming out from somewhere.
yep.
And that new class of wrestlers that's coming out from somewhere is going to do what every veteran ever has told you to do, which is hit the road and go to as many promotions as possible. And
It's
if they're
basic.
doing
Yeah.
that, you've now got 20 young boys from 3 different schools that are showing up to this show that you're also trying to get on. And there's a very low chance that you might get on that show. But you don't have any sort of, let's call it a streamline to help you understand how to state things work, or how
Yeah.
it feels to go, to another promotion at a state, or getting your resume set and all this stuff set, right? But uh, Forgotten State and myself, my friends, we want to be repositories of, intelligence, of help, of getting the boys ready to be put in these situations and to help them go out and do these things and make life overall easier for everybody. That way, it's not just a bubble that is just continuously getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more full and more full and more full until one day, who knows, right? Um, and I understand where people could get upset about that, and where people could get
Yeah.
upset about, like, well, there's a lot of us that are out here that are doing all these things and so on and so forth. But it's and it's like you said, it is a very sort of me first kind of game, but there's a it's like food service, right? First in, first out. Like, if something's close to expired, you put it towards the front of the cabinet. That way you can get it out of there. And then it's just, you get the newer stuff in the back, and then it just filters and filters and filters and filters. It's the same thing with wrestling. At a certain point, you get to that point where you're like, I've reached the max of what I can do here. I've got to go somewhere else. The problem is, you just don't have, that clear direction of where do I go. And I think that if you have people, with the Forgotten State, with the hashtag, whatever, you can just click on a small blue link, and now suddenly you're inundated with posts and people and things and places you can message and things that you can use to kind of be like, okay, well, I saw Noah posted about this promotion. Noah goes here a lot. Maybe I can hit up Noah, and maybe I can get in a car ride, or maybe I can hit up XYZ person. They've been posting about this thing, and then it's more of just it's more than simply just, yeah, nobody knows we're here. Ugh. Because I'll level with you, Dax. When I was a kid, the background of my laptop was the FIP World Heavyweight Championship because I really wanted to be FIP World Heavyweight Champion, because it was important to me, because it was under that WWN umbrella, and that thing meant more to me than anything in the world. And I don't like the idea that that means less to other people, or that other people, or that other people don't think as highly of that as me, or what have you, right?
Yeah.
But it's not going to get better until you take steps to get it there, because you can only ignore something for so long and just pretend like it's not there. And like you said, there's so much wrestling in so many different places. You gotta let people know that you're here at this point, because it's almost like on every streaming service you have access to some sort of wrestling. And if that's the case, why are they tuning into you?
Yeah. I think the Florida guys, we get double whammy or triple whammied or what have you, however I can put that. Like you said, like, you have to do so much in the state of Florida. Florida's known for, I've said this before and I'll say it again because it's been said to me by the old timers, I mean, the old timers, and that were in the business, and they were, Florida was known as the state with the best workers. And the reason that was because, back in the day, you had Florida, championship wrestler from Florida. Everybody was going through there. It was part of that NWA circuit, that people would funnel guys through, like that's just how it was. And those guys were also wrestling 5, 6, 7 days a week. And that was like a normal for them, like I'll put my boy, Alex Porto, like, Pug would do, hey, Dave, you got to get that work out there. I was wrestling 5 days a week, in the state of Florida and all this kind of stuff. Or you could talk to Joe Malenko or any of those guys, and they'll tell you the same thing. It's like, yeah, but the thing is we don't have that ability to wrestle 5 times a week in the state of Florida anymore.
God no.
Because it's not a territory anymore. The same promotion that exists in Tampa doesn't exist in Fort Myers. It doesn't exist in Miami. That doesn't exist in Orlando. That doesn't exist in Daytona, or it doesn't exist in Jacksonville and Tallahassee or what have you. They're all true independents. Is it sort of territory? Not really. People step on each other's goes left and right. We all know
Absolutely.
that. So like
Absolutely.
it's truly independent in that sense. And then like a lot of people, it's kind of like you hear from wrestlers that sometimes they don't want to have a belt. I'm sure all the wrestlers have been in a situation where you're working for a company and you're just there for the reps or whatever, or maybe some other reason, and then like I just don't want the belt here because
Yeah.
I'm going to leave at a certain point. It's no offense to them, but it's just like, hey, I got bigger fish to fry, or I have
I
motives that I
I
want to
have
work
to
toward.
show up. Yep.
Like, and the thing is, and you want to help that promotion out. So, um, like I guess I think I hit on all the angles I think that people could have. I'm not saying I had those.
Yeah.
I know me personally, I don't like to be forgotten. I think a lot of people don't like to be forgotten. But the
Absolutely
thing
not.
is, you know, yelling at the rooftop saying, "Hey, motherfuckers, I'm still here, and I bet I can out wrestle half your guys in the top 300 on PWI, or at least keep up with them. At least I deserve an opportunity here." You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, and know, so like we have a lot of things that are going on. And the other thing is, a lot of the Florida guys do get an opportunity to go on like AW or NXT
Absolutely.
Dark or
And that should be
whatever, and
celebrated.
not NXT Dark, but AW Dark and NXT and things like that, and Level Up or whatever the heck it's called now. But the thing is, we're getting stomped, on those. But back in the day, it was the same freaking thing. You know what I mean? Like the Florida
Yeah.
guys that were on WCW Worldwide. Like you talking my boy, Ray Ayala. He worked, some job matches on that. That's just how it was back in the day. Ain't
Oh
nothing
yeah.
wrong with that. And bottom line, it just goes back to the old rhetoric. I think everyone really is on the same page.
Yeah.
Get your butt up and around and network and get out of state and just better at wrestling.
Yeah.
You know, um, there's a lot of wrestlers that are over that can't wrestle yet. They couldn't reverse a headlock. But the thing is that's pro wrestling. Well, like you got all shapes, all sizes, all different kinds of things. Um, like my gimmick, I have, both my gimmicks are very, very different than your gimmick that you have. If you even want to even call it a gimmick or your persona, your look, or whatever you want to say, it's completely different. We're all different. We're all individuals, and we all deserve to be able to represent ourselves. And the thing is if you guys choose to loop in, hey, your state into your name, if it's kind of like man, what was it? Like if you hear somebody say, "I'm the best damn wrestler in the state of Florida," or it's like, because you have this belt from this promotion, does that belt represent the state of Florida? We don't have a Florida territory, like a true Florida territory,
Yeah.
like the olden days. So how much weight does it carry? But the thing is, to some people, to fans, it might carry weight. Because they're saying it for
Exactly.
the state of Florida. They're not saying it for the fucking other wrestlers. Shut the fuck up. Stop
Exactly.
acting like a goddamn mark. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because, like,
And
really, it's promotional.
yep. I'm
If
glad that you understand that.
uh, yeah, like if if I'm having a match with no avail, I'm not going to go out there and say, "No, no avail, you're 140 pounds soaking wet. My breakfast looks bigger than you." No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk about your virtues that you have, the things that you bring to the table, reasons why I could fucking lose, and why I got to train up and study and do all those kind of things to whoop your fucking ass. And by the way, you better pay for a fucking ticket because it's cool, whatever. Like, that's different ways that people promote. But there are people that go out there and say, "Fuck this guy, his ass. I fucked his wife last week," whatever the fuck he said. And this is a lot of swearing on there. I'm sorry, guys, if you got any youngins here. But the thing
It's the
is that,
effect of me.
like, that's different ways people promote, by the way.
Absolutely.
Stop. I think people need to just take a step back and realize this is entertainment, folks. Okay.
Hmm.
We're not in the fucking UFC. And by the way, the UFC and MMA copies us anyway. Like, you watch
100%.
your entire it's lifted from freaking WWE 2K. Like anytime you
Right.
watch anything now. So it is what it
My
is.
thought process is always you can't be it. Everyone can say like I'm the best or I'm better than this person or what have you. It's entertainment. That's purely subjective. And if you're looking at things from the point of view of a fan, yeah, it's really cool that this really intricate and in-depth wrestling sequence. But maybe that fan really likes watching dudes get slapped in the face with pieces of cheese, and that's why they're going
Yep.
to buy a ticket instead of watching you do a bunch of wrestling shit. And maybe we do go in front of another crowd, and they're really invested in seeing you do a bunch of wrestling shit and don't like people being slapped in the face with cheese.
Yep.
It's all about knowing your audience, and if it offends you, obviously you aren't the audience that it was meant for,
Yep.
because it's not meant for the boys. It's meant for everyone else who should be paying attention to it. If the boys can benefit from it, which I've already laid out how they can, that's some free game for anybody that's listening. Absolutely,
You can't steal
absolutely,
cheese's. It's cheese's finished, motherfucker. Sage
absolutely,
motherfucker to the elbow.
absolutely, absolutely. Go ahead and do so. But I at the end of the day, it's about attracting fans. It's attracting a fan base, and it's about getting more people to watch wrestling and watch Florida wrestling. And my job is not to get Florida wrestlers to watch Florida wrestling, because that's the most counterintuitive shit I've ever heard in my life. My job is to get fans, people who don't watch wrestling, people who do watch wrestling and just don't know they were here. My job is to get them to watch wrestling, and I
Yep.
think I do a pretty okay job at it so far. And you know, if people want to get mad
You're
about
all
that,
right.
that
You're all right. I give you shit over some shit, but like
um,
skidding like 7 times in a match, but we'll get over that.
it's gotten so much worse, Dax. It's
I'm
gotten
sure
so
it
much
has.
worse, dude. It's so convenient. Um,
I'm gonna start calling you Road Rash.
um, but yeah, man, I understand why people get upset about it. I get that, but I also understand uh, not everything is for the boys. Sometimes it's to put some butts in seats, and maybe I don't always succeed in it. Maybe I don't always do it the most delicate way, but uh, usually it works. So
It's not your
we'll see
job to
about
make the
this.
wrestlers happy. Bottom line,
Not in the
it's not my
slightest.
job.
Not in the
It's
slightest.
your job to either piss off the fans or give them what they want.
Absolutely.
And if people can't get that, then and I think a lot of this has just been subject to misinterpretation. And
Oh yeah, 100%.
I don't think that's a failure on anyone specific. Um, Looking backwards, maybe if you guys were just me spitballing, okay, like maybe if you guys said, for example, explain the forgotten state a little bit more, it
Yeah.
could have been more rationalized better, you comprehended better. But then you might also lose the fact that you guys are trying to explain shit Barney style to people, and it might
Yeah.
lose the goddamn appeal of what you guys are going
E-
for. And it's like
exactly.
being a shock jock in a sense, like their job to shock and go, make people think, get them spinning. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the art of professional wrestling. So the mystique. So
Absolutely.
I think the air has been cleared here, at least from my perspective. And by the way, I didn't have a problem with it. I did not like being said that my state is forgotten, but I've explained why, and you've explained to me,
Yeah.
and I understand, and I think we both agree on what like now we're on this. Everyone's on the same page. But me personally, I always lean towards. I think I know what these guys do. They're just trying to get over, and I think
Yeah.
that's what it really comes down to. And
That's
you
all
know what?
wrestling
Hey,
is.
now you can go in and you could go and say it might appeal to other promoters. I say, hey man, let's get those Forgotten State guys over here, man. We could do like a freaking NWO invasion or whatever, like, something like your Four Horsemen or so. We got these guys because there's always some guys like Southern guys that think they're the Four Horsemen of their promotion.
Oh yeah.
You guys would go in
Oh,
and
yeah.
be, the disruption against them or something, like, hey man, like being disruptive is just a part of making it, bro. When Pepsi came out, the people at Coca-Cola weren't happy about it. You know what I mean? But that's what they had to do to get over, and sell,
Exactly.
sell their pop. So, hey, bro, you got just any kind of just to close up here. We're at an hour and 14, so I kind of just want to, take it home here. I guess what's coming up for you. What kind of plugs you want to put in here, and closing thoughts that you got.
Coming up this weekend, it is currently March the 7th today, correct?
8th.
The 8th. Oh my God, I'm behind. This coming Saturday, I have NRG in its debut show. That's going to be fantastic. I'm taking on Blake
What's
Banks.
the main event on that?
I believe it's August Artois versus Gangrel, if I'm correct.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so that'll be very interesting. I'm curious to see if he can set his blood on fire. That'd be sick.
It's harder to set things on fire than you think. We just did something on TV, and it was we had to shoot it like 12 times because
dude,
there's a big difference from lighter fluid and Zippo fluid. Then put that way. charcoal fluid. Oh, I'll leave it at that.
Bunch of new merch and everything coming out. That should be out within the next couple weeks. If you want to find out more information about any fullygimmicked.com, FULLY gimmicked.com. If you want to find out any more information about that, or if you want to follow me on my social media, you can follow me on Instagram at NoAvail97. You can follow me on Twitter at La Sex Pistola. And if you would like to find out more about what the Forgotten State is doing at any given time, whether it's myself, Marquise, Sir Nightmare, Donovan, Martyr, First Class, anything like that, you can probably just look up hashtag Forgotten State on any social media, and you'll probably find something from one of us.
Gotcha. Awesome, guys. You guys are going to have to get some shirts there for the Forgotten State if it hasn't been done yet. With a big Florida, like a big Florida outline right on it. You know what I mean?
If we walk that, it really will be like the NWO walking in the locker rooms with that thing on. They're gonna be like, "Oh, it's the Forgotten State guys again."
These Forgotten State guys are taking over our locker room. What are we gonna do? Let's get them out.
Move over, brother. That's my chair.
Hey, like I said, there's trade off with everything in life, and you guys might get a little bit of that, or you might not. What the heck is that thing that people were wearing? Billy Stark's brand.
The BS.
Like they had the armbands or the knee.
Big Starks, brother.
Is it Big Starks? Is that what it is? Is that different than Billy?
It's Billy's. It's Billy's familial brand. It's ran by her and her father, Mouse.
Her family deal. Okay. Yeah. But it's like like they had that deal. But it gets contagious, right? So hey, man.
Oh yeah.
You keep doing what you're doing. Keep getting better, because eventually, you're doing a good job. You know what I mean? And you're one of the guys I keep an eye on. I try not to be a grumpy old man. I try to, support all the guys that are going out there and they're freaking running and gunning, and you guys are one of those, and you're one of them, along with a lot of the Forgotten State gentlemen that you mentioned. A lot of guys that I, have known since their infancy in professional wrestling. I want to see all of them succeed. Okay. They're, we can only just keep grinding, and I wish you guys well, and you might see me there at some of those places at one point. So I'll always be happy to share the locker room with you guys. And
the Axe, brother.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm not the only Daxy X anymore, so I really got to start.
There's another one.
Out, Well, the FTR one, like they were referring
Yeah,
to him as that for a
yeah,
bit, even though I
yeah,
was
yeah.
first. But Dax is a name. Get over it. Yeah, that's where you trademark your shit, and I did not. So,
Absolutely,
um, it is what it is, right? I wish that guy well as well.
absolutely.
But the thing is like, you guys are doing the right thing. And I don't think anybody can disagree with this fact that you guys are out of state. You guys are getting experience. You're wrestling different styles. You're getting on other promotions. Some of you are making money. I know traveling out of state, it's hard to make money right now. But you guys are jumping in cars together, trying to carpool, trying to mitigate the financial costs as much as possible, and you guys are getting noticed. And that's all that fucking matters. So
Oh yeah,
keep doing that shit. You know what I mean?
thank you.
I mean, I miss you guys down at Tampa Bay Pro from time to time, but guess what? Hey man, I always got toys to play with. You know what I mean? I always got guys down there, and I know, if at some point I could always pick up the phone if one of you guys are available, we can get you running the gun down here again too. So, hey man, go out, get it a bigger name. And work make those connections, bro. And
Well,
the Forgotten
thank you,
State,
Dax.
just keep on rolling, baby. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, that's a wrap. I'll put my plugs in at the end. Thank you so much. Noah, I'm gonna sign off right here. We're at 1 hour and 20 minutes. Okay. Thank you, buddy.
Cool. No worries. Thank you, Dax.
All right, man. All right. Take care.
You too.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. Hey, we do have Tampa Bay Pro Wrestling coming up here on May 27th. It's going to be a night show, tentatively scheduled for 7 p.m. in Largo, Florida, with Retro Rat toys and games. Kids are free with a paid adult. Also, if you guys are looking for some official merchandise, go check out shoptampabayprowrestling.com. Get your latest t-shirts and other collectible memorabilia. Thanks a lot, guys, and have a great day.